G'day and welcome to lesson number 10 in this course on shoemaking. Today we will be taking our shoes that we lasted last week and preparing them to receive an outer sole. So let's get started. So let's start by prying up the upper from the sole. This will just allow us to get our glue in under there where it needs to be. So I should have mentioned it in the last video, but when you're hammering the nails in, they should stick out at a bit of an angle like this. That will allow you to pry the sole up. If the nails are pointing inwards, then it's going to be impossible to pull this upper up. Should have mentioned it in the last video, but I didn't. So we can apply our glue. Now I'm using Selleys Quick Grip. It's an Australian product. It's just a water-based contact adhesive. You can really use all sorts. It doesn't matter as long as it's very, very strong, because this is one of the most important parts of the shoe. If this fails, then your sole will start to lift up and your shoe will start to fall apart. So we shall glue it together. This is way too much. So you want to dig in there to make sure that you get glue on as much of that sole as you can, because the more surface area that you have contacting, the better the bond will be. And the way that contact adhesive works is that you paint both surfaces, let it get tacky, and then put them together. So if you miss a spot, then only one of the surfaces will be glued and you won't get a strong bond. All right, so I've got glue absolutely everywhere. I didn't need to get it this far in, but it doesn't really matter if you got it on there. Because I had so much on my brush at the start, I ended up with clumps of glue under these nails, which is not ideal. With contact adhesive, you really just want like quite a thin layer, because if you have big lumps, it won't glue any better. You'll just have lumps in it, which is not what you want. You want good solid contact. Now we'll leave that until it goes somewhat transparent instead of white. Now that we've let that dry a little, we're going to get our heat gun and dry it a little bit more, but the heat will also make it tacky, which will give it a stronger bond, because it kind of, I don't know, I guess it acts as like a catalyst for that chemical reaction and that bonding. Now grab your hammer. This is just a standard crosspeen hammer. An official shoemaking hammer looks pretty similar, except this head has a bigger diameter. But this will do. This is much easier to find, and some of you probably already have one. So we're going to use the cross end to get in between the nails. And you want to kind of strike out to in. So you should be pushing the leather further in as you go, rather than pushing it out, which will cause wrinkles and all sorts of problems. Now that I'm fairly confident that the glue is holding it instead of the nails, I'm going to pull all of the nails out. Now that all of the nails are out, we can get rid of as many of these wrinkles as we can. Now we're still going to end up with some of these, but the idea is that by hammering out to in, you can move some of them away from that edge where it matters, back here where it doesn't matter. So I'm using the flat area now. I'm trying to pull it in, so don't hit the upper like I just did. See that? See how most of that's nice and flat? Now there are a few spots like here where the glue hasn't wanted to stick. So I'll try that again. I'll just put a teensy bit of glue under there, give it the heat gun treatment and try again. So with these folds, what you want to try and do is have all of the sole covered. So let me try and demonstrate. So if you've got a fold like that, you've got this area under here that's not contacting the sole. So what you want to do is push it in like that. So you're hammering into here and pushing that in, that in, that in. So you've still got that fold, but you've got full contact on the sole. So that's what I've done on some of these, but I need to do a little bit more. Bit more glue. I'm just going to use something small and sharp to get it under there. So you can see that whole area wasn't stuck down particularly well. It's probably too much glue. Another bit down there that needs it. Those waves have actually disappeared quite nicely. And there you have it. So let's leave this for a short while just to make sure that that glue has set properly. While I'm waiting for that one, I'll do the other side. I ended up doing a better job on the second shoe, so I'm going to use that for demonstration. We are going to trim off our excess around here and here. So the first thing you want to do, you want to get rid of those big lumps. Now you're not cutting anywhere near that edge where it turns over. In fact, what you want to do, this back part, I'm going to put a piece of leather in there to fill that space, but the front, I'm going to skive it down to be level with the sole, so that when we put our outer sole on, there's no step. You'll see that there's not that much material left here after I'd cut off the excess, so that's not good. That's one of the reasons why it's important to have more of the upper coming around here, which was my mistake for not adding that extra onto the lasting allowance. Over here, you've got plenty of material, so even if we take this down to 0, there's still going to be plenty of material left to bond onto, whereas that, as much as I hate to say it, there's a chance that that may separate in future. But we'll just have to put up with it. Now on this end, because I'm going to put a filler piece of leather in here, we don't want to skive it down to nothing, but we do want to get rid of any excess lumps. I'm fairly happy with that. This side's been skived down fairly smooth, so there's no step there. That spot that we looked at earlier is really not ideal. In fact, I did take a bit too much out of there, so try not to do that. This side looks good. I've removed a bit of bulk over that seam and this seam. Now we will cut a piece to go in here. I've cut a piece that will fit nicely in there. It doesn't have to be the same leather, as long as it's the same thickness. What I'm going to do to make sure I get that shape onto here perfectly, I've roughed up this side a bit. What I'm going to do, line it up here. Now you may need to put some nails in just to stop it from moving around. I'm just going to hammer on that that line where the upper ends, and what we should end up with is an impression on the underside of this piece. You should be able to see that. So the fibres where it needs to be cut off have been flattened down. So I will just cut that out quickly. So I didn't do a perfect job. There's a gap here and a bit of a gap around there, but I'm fairly happy with that. So we'll just glue that down. Now if you're wondering about this point where I stopped it, it's about the point where the last starts to, well, instead of curving that way, it starts to curve back up. So here's convex and there's concave and convex. So it's probably a bit behind the balls of your feet, right about where the shoe starts contacting the ground. All right, time to glue that on. Great. I'll just skive this down so there's no step here. So I'm fairly happy with how smooth these transitions are. They can be improved. I'm actually going to cheat. So the next thing we have to do before we stick anything on here is to rough it up so that glue will stick to it. Now you could sit there and just scratch off that top layer. You could scratch it, you can cut it. You could use a dedicated roughing tool like this, which has a gritty surface. Or you can do what I'm going to do, which is use a sanding machine. The benefit of that is it's much quicker, but it will also help smooth out any bumps. So this, for instance, which I could just do with a knife, really, but the sanding machine will allow me to just do everything a bit quicker. So there we have it. We've got nice smooth transition between the upper and the sole. There's no bumps around here, and I've roughed up right to that edge, which means that when we apply our glue, it should have a nice, good, strong bond, which will mean that the shoe will last a long time. That's enough for today. In today's lesson, we have taken our shoes that we lasted, we've glued down the upper onto the inner sole and prepared it to receive our outer sole. So in the next lesson, we will be cutting and gluing on our outer sole. I'll see you then.